The first time my sister offered to help me financially, she did it while wearing a $1,400 coat and complaining about valet parking. That detail mattered. Because people reveal themselves most clearly when pretending to be generous. We were standing outside this overpriced Italian restaurant in downtown Dallas after a family birthday dinner for my mother. Everybody laughing. Wine flowing. My brother-in-law talking loudly about cryptocurrency like he personally invented Risk. Then my sister Colette looked at my truck, an old silver Tacoma I'd intentionally kept, and gave me that smile. You know the one. The smile people use when they think they're above your situation but still want credit for compassion. If things ever get too tight, she said softly, we can help cover rent for a few months. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because my checking account at that exact moment had more money in it than everyone at that dinner combined. But I just nodded like, sure, whatever. Appreciate it. 3 years. That's how long I let my family believe I was broke. And honestly, the money part wasn't even the experiment. The reactions were. See, after my father died, something shifted in our family dynamics. Dad had been the only person who treated everybody equally. Once he was gone, status became the new religion. Who earned more? Who lived where? Whose kids attended private schools? Whose vacations looked expensive enough for Instagram? My older sister Colette thrived in that environment. She married Preston Hale, a corporate attorney who treated conversations like cross-examinations. Everything with them became performance. The house. The watches. The carefully casual mentions of investment properties. Meanwhile, I quietly sold the software logistics company I'd built with 2 college friends right before Dad passed away. The acquisition came fast. 8 figures after taxes. I didn't tell my family. At first because grief made it feel irrelevant. Then because something about their behavior after the funeral made me curious. At the reception, Preston pulled me aside near the coffee station and asked, "So what's your backup plan now?" Backup plan for what? You know, financially. Dad had been dead 6 hours. 6. And this man was already evaluating my economic survivability like I was a struggling franchise location. Yeah. That didn't sit right. So I stayed quiet. Bought a modest condo under an LLC. Kept driving the Tacoma. Wore old jeans. Never corrected assumptions. And man, people tell you exactly who they are when they think you have nothing to offer. Family dinners became fascinating after that. Colette started explaining budgeting to me over salmon. My younger cousin Daphne once handed me a folded $20 bill at Christmas, just in case. Preston recommended networking events, 4 opportunities. The crazy part? None of them were openly cruel. That would have been easier. No, they specialized in polished condescension. Concern wrapped around superiority. Like rich people emotional gift wrap. My ally through all this was Nora Bellamy, one of the original engineers from my company. Sharp, dry humor, zero tolerance for nonsense. She knew about the money because we'd built the business together. One night she asked why I kept pretending. We were sitting on my balcony overlooking downtown lights while she drank expensive whiskey I hid inside a generic grocery bag before family visits. I'm learning, I told her. Learning what? Who treats me differently when they think I can't benefit them? Nora stared at me for a second. That's either deeply wise or mildly concerning. Probably both. The humiliation patterns got worse over time because success makes some people generous while imagined failure makes them comfortable. Colette especially loved public advice. At my mother's birthday brunch she once said, loud enough for everyone, not everybody has to be ambitious to live a meaningful life. That one almost impressed me. The elegance of the insult. Preston added, stability matters more than chasing unrealistic dreams. Meanwhile, I owned partial stakes in 3 logistics firms and spent weekends reviewing commercial property acquisitions for fun. Life's weird. Still, I stayed calm. Because patience is expensive emotionally, but profitable strategically. Then came the trigger. Every family has one moment where the performance collapses. Ours happened over a lake house. My mother wanted to sell the old family property outside Granbury after maintenance costs started piling up. Everybody gathered for a family discussion that felt suspiciously like a corporate merger meeting. Colette and Preston arrived with printed spreadsheets. Never trust relatives who bring spreadsheets to emotional conversations. Preston immediately started talking about market timing, liability exposure, tax efficiency. Guy thought he owned the room. Then he casually suggested Mom move into a smaller retirement condo. The silence afterward felt sharp. Mom looked down at her coffee cup quietly. That bothered me. A lot. See, Dad built that lake house by hand over 16 years. Every warped floorboard had a story attached to it. And Preston was reducing it to square footage. Then Colette said the line. We all have to be realistic about what people can contribute financially here. People. Not siblings. People. Meaning me. That's when I knew this was gonna get messy. Still, I waited. Let them keep talking. Preston proposed buying the property himself at a family discount, since apparently nobody else could afford upkeep responsibilities. Interesting assumption. Mom looked embarrassed even hearing it. Nora, who'd come with me quietly that day, leaned toward me and whispered, "Please tell me you're about to ruin this man's afternoon." I almost smiled. Almost. Instead, I asked Preston calmly, "What number are you valuing the property at?" He slid a paper across the table confidently. Under market value. Way under. Predatory enough to hide behind legal language but obvious to anybody paying attention. I looked at it a while. Then I asked Mom softly, "You actually want to sell?" "No," she admitted quietly. "I just don't know another option." There it was. Fear. Families built on status always exploit fear eventually. So I finally stopped pretending. I reached into my bag and placed a folder on the table. Property transfer paperwork. Trust documentation. Maintenance endowment projections. Silence hit instantly. Colette frowned first. "What is this?" "I already purchased the adjacent land last year," I said calmly. "And I created a preservation trust this morning." Preston blinked twice. "Excuse me? The lake house isn't being sold." Nobody moved. Nora looked dangerously entertained. I continued quietly, "Maintenance, taxes, repairs, insurance, it's covered permanently." Mom stared at me like she'd forgotten how to breathe. Colette recovered first. "You had this kind of money the whole time?" "Yep." The room changed temperature. Literally felt it happen. Preston leaned back slowly. "Why would you hide that?" Funny question. I looked at him for a long second. "Because I wanted to see who you were when you thought I had nothing." Nobody spoke after that. Not immediately. And honestly, that silence was the most truthful conversation we'd ever had. The fallout came quietly afterward. Colette stopped giving advice. Preston suddenly treated me like a peer instead of a charity project. Mom cried the next morning while walking the lake property with me because apparently relief sounds a lot like grief when it arrives late. But the biggest change happened inside me. I stopped performing smallness to keep other people comfortable. That's exhausting work. A month ago Nora came over while I was restoring Dad's old dock at the lake house. Sunset over the water. Tools scattered everywhere. Country music drifting from somebody's boat in the distance. She handed me a beer and asked, "So was the experiment worth it?" I thought about it a while. Then looked at the house Dad built board by board without ever needing applause for it. Yeah, I said quietly. Now I know exactly who was measuring my value, and who never needed to.